Hi everyone. I hope you're all doing okay. I took a break during the weekend. I'm sorry I didn't make any videos. I didn't make one on Saturday or Sunday. I think my last one I made was Friday. So sorry. I hope that's okay. Um, so let's see. We left off on chapter 5, I believe. Let's see. And so I'm flipping through my pages here. Parents drove him to the hospital. The doctor says he seems to be fine. It's probably an allergic reaction. Alan goes out into the sunlight and describes what it must feel like to be a plant, which seems like pretty wonderful. And then he goes to school, and skin is green. All the kids laugh at him. And Miss Green, what does Miss Green do? She doesn't believe him. She gets angry with him because he doesn't have the outline for his lipstick project, which she said he's supposed to be doing, although he's not. Yeah, she got pretty mad at him. So anyway, so chapter 6 is called Proof. And I think when I left off, I was asking you guys, who's going to prove what? Is it Alan? Does he have to prove something? And if he has to prove something, who is he going to prove it to, and what kind of proof does he need? So that is where we are going to start. Chapter 6, Proof. Can you believe it? I had a project that was sure to win the silver trophy, not to mention Miss Green would probably get voted best science teacher. And what happens? She won't even listen to me. I also had another problem. Miss Green had told me not to come back until I'd washed off the green paint. Except it wasn't green paint, and I didn't know how to change myself back. As I walked home, I decided there was only one thing for me to do. I had to figure out a way to prove to Miss Green what I had done. What else could I do? But how? I asked myself. How do you prove something to somebody? Why, even my own folks didn't believe me, or the doctor who examined me. Telling them obviously didn't work. Even seeing me didn't convince anyone. But there must be some way. People believe certain things, and they didn't believe other things. Why? What made the difference? It was a long walk home, but I didn't mind. I had time to think. I stopped at the park in the center of town and sat on a bench by the lake so I could watch the ducks. I put my lunch pail on my knees and opened it. Mom had packed me a big lunch because I hadn't eaten any breakfast. As expected, I still wasn't hungry. I had no appetite at all. I didn't have to eat any more. All I needed was sunlight and water. I was making my own food internally, just as a plant does. I had become a human plant. I suddenly became very thirsty. I hurried over to the drinking fountain, or the water fountain, and drank for about 5 minutes. When I had finished, I noticed that 3 people had lined up behind me. They seemed startled when they saw my green face. Just paint, I told them. They all looked relieved. How funny, I thought. They believed something that wasn't true without questioning it. But if I had told them the truth, they wouldn't have believed me, no matter what I had said. Hi, I'm a plant. Watch me eat sunlight. Now let me ask you, who's going to believe that? I had to figure out a way to prove it. That's all there was to it. I continued walking home thinking hard. I passed shops and restaurants and service stations. I passed the City Hall and the Plaza Hotel and the Daily Courier newspaper building. The newspaper. Something had happened a few days ago. It was at breakfast. Mom and Dad were having an argument about something. I don't remember what. How do you know that? My mom had said. It says so right here in the newspaper, my father had answered. That was it. If I could somehow get my story in the newspaper, that would be all the proof I'd need. Miss Green would believe me, and so would my parents, and so would everybody. I tucked in my shirt, pushed open the heavy glass doors with both hands, and walked into the newspaper building. You're a what? I'm a plant. A what? P-L-A-N-T. I spelled it out for the bald-headed man who wore Coke bottle glasses and who sat behind a desk that was so piled high with papers I could barely see him. The sign on his office door had been Features Editor. And there's a picture of him right here. So you can see Alan, he's pretty green. The newspaper guy has kind of a green shirt on too. And they mention Coke bottle glasses. Have you ever heard of that before? Oh my, this is an old term. Coca-Cola used to come in bottles, not cans, many, many years ago. You can still buy it in bottles, but that's how it first came out. And the Coke bottles were really, really thick with a green, really thick glass. And so somebody that has really thick glasses on, they say they're like Coke bottle glasses. So that's kind of a reference to something that happened that was way back in the back. I know it's hard to believe, I continued, but please hear me out. My dad's expression worked because the man kept quiet and let me talk. Halfway through my story, he stopped me. He took out a small tape recorder from his desk and had me start over. When I had finished, the editor pressed a button and spoke into a small plastic box on his desk. "Miss Padilla," he said, "get me a photographer, and hurry." He looked at me over the tops of the piles of papers on his desk. "Do I have a beauty for tomorrow's feature?" I think I'm going to have to wear my glasses. It's kind of dark in here. I know it looks really bright, but my old eyes. "The editor believed me," I told Grandpop when I got home. "My story will be in tomorrow's newspaper. Everyone will believe me now." Grandpop didn't seem very excited. "Don't worry about other people," he told me. "It's not important what they think." "You don't have Miss Green for 4th grade science," I told him. The next morning I put on my robe and went out to the driveway to wait for the newspaper. It's supposed to be delivered at 6 o'clock. It was right on time. I opened up the paper, and sure enough, there I was, in living color, right on the front page of Section 3. It wasn't a bad picture either. I was smiling, my hands high up in the air. I put the newspaper on the kitchen table in Dad's place so he wouldn't miss it. Everything was set. All I had to do was wait. "Would you look at this?" said my father, as he sat down at the table, picking up the wrong section of the newspaper. "The president is coming to our city next week." "Do you mean the president of the United States?" asked my mother. "The one and only. Says so right here." "What on earth for?" "Says here he's going to be talking with members of an organization called SWS, Stop World Starvation. You know, the group that Applegates wanted us to join? I wanted to scream. There was my face right there in plain sight, right in front of my father, and he didn't see it. All he could talk about was the president and that group Peggy Applegate's parents belonged to. Be patient, I told myself. He'll see it. Give him time. My dad continued reading about the president. "Alan," my mother asked me, "do you feel like eating breakfast? I don't want you getting sick again." "Just a glass of water, Mom." And then my father saw it. I could tell because the scrambled eggs he had just put into his mouth came tumbling out onto his plate. He didn't say anything for the longest time. Then he just looked at me and said, "Tell me it isn't true, Alan." "It is, Dad. You can read it right there in the newspaper." My father picked up the paper and read the headline aloud. "Human Plant Eats Only Sunlight, the Amazing True Story of Alan Brewster." He handed the newspaper to my mother. "What are the neighbors going to say? And the guys at the office?" "Oh, Alan," said my mom when she saw the paper, "what have you done?" "I've proved it. That's what I've done. I've got it in the newspaper. Now you believe me, don't you?" "Listen to me, Alan," said my father, rubbing the back of his neck, "and listen good. Every week, this newspaper features some sensational story. A sensational story sells newspapers. It doesn't prove a thing." So sensational is kind of a crazy, wild story. And sometimes it might be true. Sometimes there may be like an element of it true, but they kind of blow it out of proportion. And it seems so untrue. So that's probably what they were going for. So I have to show you this picture. I hope you guys can see this. So here they are at the breakfast table. And can you see the picture of his dad? The eggs falling out of his mouth. And there's Alan. He's a little bit lighter shade of green. Most of them. There's a little bit on the vase there. Oh, I'm sorry. Let me go back. A sensational story sells newspapers because people want to read about crazy stuff. A sensational story sells newspapers. It doesn't prove a thing. It doesn't? In fact, it makes it worse. You mean Miss Green won't believe me either? Nobody in their right mind will believe you. And furthermore, I'm sick and tired of hearing about your discovery. I'm sick and tired of you not eating your meals. You're a 9-year-old boy like all other 9-year-old boys. You are not a plant. The discussion is closed. Do I make myself clear? Yes, I said, very clear. And that is the end of chapter 6. So Alan feels like he has to prove to everyone that he's a plant because nobody believes him. You know, he's like, look at me. I'm green. I'm not eating. I'm a plant. But a lot of people think that he has green paint on. So how does he prove it? It's like, well, if I put it in the newspaper, it's kind of like if you, sometimes people say, you ask them, well, how do you know that? Well, I saw it on the internet, so it must be true. I'm not sure that's probably not right most of the time. But it has to be a credible source. Most of the time, newspapers are credible sources. But it sounds like they wanted to run this story because they just thought it's this crazy, crazy kid, and we're going to run it, and people are going to read about this crazy green kid, and it's going to sell newspapers. So it didn't prove anything to his parents. I can't remember if Miss Green sees it or not. I guess we'll, sorry, I've got a itchy on my foot there. We'll have to see what Miss Green says. I can't remember what she says, but he didn't have the proof that he was hoping he would get. So that's where we're going to stop. So now the question is, what's going to happen next? So his parents don't believe him. His dad is sick and tired of the whole thing. His dad says, you just need to drop it right now. And he hasn't been back to school, so Miss Green's basically told him, drop it. So I don't know. I don't know what he's going to do next. So the next chapter is chapter 7, problems. So now we have to think about problems. What problems is he going to have? Well, he sounds like he's got a lot of problems right now. The problem is nobody believes him. The problem is he says he's a plant. He's not hungry. He's drinking water. He enjoys being out in the sunlight. So I don't know. We'll have to read chapter 7 and see. So I will see you guys next time on chapter 7. Bye.